Hey guys, yesterday I had a super long video. Sorry about that. And I did actually misspeak once. Once I dug in, one of the things I had mentioned was that how this updates and then how this doesn't update, wasn't updating, would have been fixed by React automatically, and it actually would not have. And I will explain that. There was actually a problem with the forms. And it was actually a great problem because I am absolutely feeling some anxiety. I was feeling some anxiety of how we were going to get the forms attached to meshes and lights that were created outside of the components, and it sort of lit the way on how that's going to be done. So I'll get into that, but let me, for starters, just sort of give a bit of background on the architectural changes that were done as a result to basically keep us in the same spot. Um, so basically, in the this all this red here is me just removing all the console log stuff because we don't need that anymore. That was just for the proof of concept, and the sooner you get rid of that stuff, the better. Um, then secondarily, I make changes to the mesh item here, and then I call this update mesh item. And so in this update mesh item, what happens is then the Three.js object gets updated, as opposed to where down here, so I would be getting the mesh item and then I would update it manually. I removed all that stuff. So now this is a Three.js mesh. I no longer do it here. That happens in the update mesh. So let me show you that real quick. So in update mesh, it was already set up for this. So anytime somebody would update the mesh, like down in here, it would um, it would go in and it would update. It would get the three geometry and it would update it. But okay, so now I'm going to go into the concepts that I was talking about yesterday. Okay, so if we don't set this signal, okay, so the two major things, I made two major changes. One is I create a new mesh item array and I populate it with the old mesh item arrays mesh items, and then I set the signal. Okay, so both of these are needed plus one other thing in order for this to work the way we're seeing it. So first of all, just to demonstrate, I'm going to get rid of this mesh single um, publish. All right, so now we're no longer going to be publishing the mesh signal, and when I add a mesh and then I show the editor, it's not updating. And um, this was is necessary. So obviously it's necessary, right? And then let's undo that, hit save, and I think you can imagine it's going to work again because we're just going right back. Okay, now what if I don't create a new mesh item array and then I add it? Works here, does not work there. Okay, so even though we are publishing that there was a change, it's not getting picked up, and it's not updating. So we have to do both. This one I think is pretty simple. Anybody who understands signals at all, which maybe isn't that many people since signals are new, but if you understand signals, you'll understand. Hey, you kind of have to let the system know before it can update. But the first one, that's the real brain tweaker in JavaScript. I've talked about it a bunch of times. I'm just going to mention it real quick one more time. Uh, Angular, JavaScript, most things don't recognize changes within objects or arrays. They only recognize a change of the object or array. So after we do this, we change the way JavaScript allocates memory. The mesh items arrays address changes, so that kicks off the change in the um, screen update. All right, so I'm gonna try so hard to get done fast today. Okay, so now on the last thing we had to do is in this mesh item, and this was the part where just the way the nature of let me go in this view here. Just the nature of um, Java of React would not have actually Fixed it. Okay, let me get rid of that console log, and so basically every time we get an update of the mesh list. So that's what this effect does. It sees that this mesh list changed, and then it executes the code. I added to loop over the mesh list, and for each update, for each item in the mesh list, and then to do something called a brand new function called update form and pass it the mesh item. And this is like a sort of one of those like, oh my gosh, thank goodness, I see a future solution for when we have export and import. So this, as you can see, this update form is completely new. And okay, now I'll wait for 1 second. So basically I say if the form exists, then set the value, and basically take everything that we got from the mesh item itself and update the form with it. And then this is very important. This is event emit false. This is the options that you can pass along with the set value. And this one is incredibly important, because what you do if that isn't set to false, by default it's true. If you don't set it to false, what you'll do is you'll create a loop where the subscription will, the subscription will fire, and then my setup subs, when I set up my subscription, this subscription will just keep on firing, and then it'll keep updating the mesh, and then the mesh will keep publishing the signal, and you'll get like an infinite loop. And you get a really weird error. It's not very useful. It says something along the lines of, you cannot compute writable signals or something like that. But it's not particularly helpful. Sorry, my German Shepherd and other Bichon dog are barking. They be barking. So anyways, so that's important. Now this is huge, and I would probably not commit this code. I would create a branch and put this in there. But basically it says if the mesh was added outside of the component, ... add the form in. Yay, I think this solves that problem. The problem of, hey, I've exported something, now I want to re-import it. It didn't get, when it gets created by the mesh or by the Three.js service, it's not going to have a form. But then when the Three.js service publishes the change, it will look and it'll add the form. And this code should work. Like I said, I would not commit this in a professional environment. I wouldn't commit this into the code, but I would definitely have it there. So anyways, those three things solve the problem. Now this is updating. Now this is just a literal micrometer forward in what we need to do to get things working. Next, I need to come in here, and instead of updating these meshes, I just need to calculate what the time that is elapsed is and where the box should be based on time, not based on like whenever it's been called. So whatever the time of the clock is, I would then calculate where it goes, and I would not modify the mesh item, so we won't be seeing any change in here. I would just modify the meshes themselves, and then in the mesh manager, or in the scene manager, I'll add in the animation manager, I'll add like a reset, which would then set the clock to 0, and everything would go back to that. And I did mention that I hope there's something good about the clock, and you can, in fact, I learned from ChatGPT. Let's see, you can say, let me see, this dot clock dot start, and that function will then reset the clock to 0, so that would put all the animations back to their original place. And that is one single teeny tiny step forward on where we need to go to actually get these animations going. Oh man, I did exactly 10 minutes. I wanted to go short today. Sorry, guys. But I am done. And happy coding. Bye.